I can only look at this from what we consider to be a normative orthodox point, that is from a point of view of examining evolution in light of the Quran, the Sunnah, and the consensus or ijma of the scholars. That's really our weighing tool. It's how we weigh things to know what is good, bad, right or wrong, ethical, unethical. So how could we then deal with evolution? Well, there's two ways. One way would be to take the main arguments and the main evidences of the evolutionary narrative as taught in the universities, schools and colleges and in the well-known books, and then compare that with the opposite narrative, the critique or the criticism of evolution along with its proofs, and then kind of weigh it up. What is right, what is wrong, what is false, what is true, what is, wheat from the chaff. And then whatever is left, we can then examine that in the light of the Quran and the Sunnah and the consensus, the ijma. But to do that, one would have to be a genius to know the various fields of evolution, paleontology, about fossils and bones, evolutionary biology, evolutionary psychology, genetics and DNA, and make an honest evaluation of the pros and cons, the rights and wrongs and whatever. And that could take weeks, months, years, or for some professors and practitioners in the field, decades. I'm not equipped. I have no sound grounding in biology, let alone evolutionary biology, other than doing a basic, what we call ordinary level in college. My field was astrophysics. So that's one way, and that would be a very good way, except that it would require a lot of specialization. And people just can't do that, nor have the time for that. The other way would be to say, look, let's just take the standard story of evolution as we're being taught it in the universities, as it comes out in books, as Richard Dawkins and New Atheism and whomsoever teach it, and say, okay, look, we know that there is some criticism of it. The criticism ranges from outright rejection and, on the verge of Christian creationism, to, well, it has some errors and some shortcomings, this, that, and the other. Let's leave that and let's just say, well, let's take the standard narrative of evolution at face value, not because we think it's all true or all false, but that's how it's being taught at the moment. And let's critique that, or let's weigh that in the scales of Islam. Doing that will have far greater benefit, it seems to me. Why? One, because we're dealing with what is being taught. And we're not getting into, is it right, it is wrong. It's a bit like, again, a side point. In about a week or week and a half, we'll be in the middle night of the month, the Islamic month of Sha'ban, the month just before the Islamic month of Ramadan. And there is this 15th night of Sha'ban, in Arabic, Laylatul Nisf min Sha'ban, the middle night of Sha'ban. And there are some hadiths, some sayings attributed to the Prophet in the Sunan of Tirmidhi, in the Sunan of Ibn Majah and other places. There are about 10, 20 hadiths which speak about the virtue of this night, that God is more forgiving on this night than he is any other night. The thing about these hadiths is that there is a huge difference of opinion amongst the hadith specialists, the scholars of hadith, as to are those hadiths authentic or not. One group of classical hadith scholars came out and said, none of those hadiths are authentic. They're all either weak, very weak, or fabricated. They're a mixed bunch, but nothing is authentic. And so for them, there is no authentic statement about the virtue of that night. That night is an ordinary night. And so they treated it as an ordinary night. But the majority of hadith masters and hadith specialists, including Imam Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali, they said, no, there are 3 or 4 or 5 of those hadiths which are sound or authentic. And so the night does have a distinction. Now, if you and I don't know your background, Rami, but if you're anything like me, if you show me chains of hadiths, even though I've studied hadiths, I've studied the sciences of hadith as part of, and I have ijazat, I have authorization in 1 or 2 small books in hadiths from scholars, but you show me these chains of hadiths, right? You might as well be speaking to me in Mandarin, in Chinese. It makes no difference at all. Abdullah, son of Abdurrahman, son of he is weak. Okay, if you say so, bro. I mean, I know I could go back to the books of Rijal, the books of the narrators of hadith, and tirelessly maybe work my way through a chain or whatever. That bang goes a whole week doing that. But, doing that for 30, 40 hadith and then trying to weigh up and whatever, that's beyond my pay grade. That's beyond most people's pay grade, including most scholars' pay grade. They may be an excellent jurist, but it's unlikely they're going to be an excellent hadith master of the Bukhari Muslim caliber, for example. So what do? We don't make definitive statements. We end up trusting. I trust this sheikh, I trust that scholar, or I read in this fatwa book, or I read that in the fatwa book, and we shouldn't make a big issue about it. We differ in our action. I honor the night, I don't honor the night, but we don't differ in our hearts. That would be in an honest way. Likewise, an honest appraisal of evolution. It seems to me, even within the scientific community, it's a bit like politics. There is too much to lose on this side or that side, and trying to find an honest appraisal is difficult. So doing it this way, look, let's just take the standard narrative. Then we engage with what people are engaging with. We're engaging with what Dawkins and New Atheism is speaking about. And from that angle, we can just say, oh, okay, you know what? When I hear this evolution stuff, I now know theologically in Islam, I can accept this and I can't accept that. And we can be more functioning and functionable as a community, or so it seems to me, and Allah knows best. So that's how I'd like to do it. I'm going to do it the second way and say, look, I know there's some critique, okay, but let's assume at face value, the standard story of evolution is what it is. Let's examine that in the light of Islamic theology or Islam's teachings. In order to do that, it's worth reminding ourselves, at least in the broad outlines, what is evolution saying? Okay, it's not quite, it's not quite evolution says we all came from monkeys. I mean, that's one way of looking at it. But for Muslims, leaving alone anybody else's standard, leaving alone how people treat us or don't treat us, we have to be just towards people and towards issues. And obviously I don't mean this literally, but I may not like you, Rami, okay, all right, because like you're an American, right, and we Brits were once powerful and you took the ball away from us, right, or whatever. I've got this perennial chip on my shoulder, right, but I still Islamically have an obligation to be just to you. This person here might be a criminal, right? Might be a murderer, might be, some real devious criminal, but I still can't be unjust to him. Likewise, in issues, I may not like the people who came up with evolution. I may find that a lot of people who bang on about evolution are atheists, and many of these atheists, especially if you're in Europe and Britain, they're very anti-religious. Fine, that's my opinion of them, but what they're saying I can't be unjust to. I have to see what are they saying, and I have to see it fairly. So in Islam we have this thing where the scholars say al-hukm ala shay far'un an tasawwurihi, giving a ruling about something, far'un an tasawwurihi, comes after conceptualizing it properly, comes after understanding it properly. How can I make an Islamic valid judgment on the American Constitution if I don't know the articles of the Constitution? And I just think it's all about invading countries. And you think, and you say to me, Rami, no, Abu Ali, you know, I don't know what you've read, but that's not really what the Constitution is about. And, you know, based upon my emotive feelings and my ignorance or my misunderstanding or I just can't be bothered to find out, based upon, it's about invasion, I base an Islamic ruling on that.